The 1980s was a decade where imagination exploded across neon skylines and radioactive wastelands. Yet hidden beneath blockbusters like E.T. and Blade Runner lay films that dared to go weirder, darker, and stranger. Forgotten experiments of cosmic horror and dystopian beauty buried by studio fear or audience confusion. But what if those lost visions were the real heart of the decade? Let's rediscover them. Number 15. Life Force, 1985. When Life Force arrived, audiences didn't know what hit them. Marketed as a big-budget space thriller, it morphed halfway into a British apocalypse about psychic vampires draining the life from London itself. Directed by Tobe Hooper of Texas Chainsaw fame, it was too strange, too sensual, too cosmic for mainstream America. Critics called it a disaster. Yet it was secretly one of the boldest science fiction visions of the decade. The story begins with a shuttle discovering a derelict alien craft drifting near Halley's Comet. Inside lie perfect humanoids frozen in crystal coffins. They're brought back to Earth, and all hell breaks loose. Their energy-draining powers turn citizens into desiccated husks, spreading chaos through the streets. The imagery was haunting practical effects bursting with gruesome creativity. Censors trimmed scenes for fear of shocking audiences, already on edge after films like The Thing and Videodrome. Studio executives demanded more coherence. Hooper refused. He wanted cosmic Lovecraftian terror, not Star Wars spectacle. Production spiraled into chaos, ballooning costs, and confused marketing doomed it. Decades later, though, fans reclaimed it. Life Force became a cult gem, celebrated for its fearless weirdness and orchestral bombast by Henry Mancini. Modern critics now see it as the ultimate fusion of hammer horror and space opera, a fever dream about obsession and extinction. The film reminds us that sometimes the strangest visions outlive the safe ones. Number 14. Enemy Mine, 1985. Enemy Mine was supposed to be a simple war allegory. What it became was a box office catastrophe turned timeless parable about humanity itself. Directed by Wolfgang Petersen, fresh off Das Boot, it starred Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. as enemies stranded on a hostile planet, forced to survive together. The film's premise felt Shakespearean in its simplicity. A human fighter pilot and a reptilian alien crash during an interstellar war. Alone on a barren world, they begin as mortal foes, trading blows among meteor storms before the silence of isolation breaks them. Gradually, hatred turns to friendship, then to family, as they fight freezing nights and deadly creatures together. But behind the camera production was a nightmare. The first director, Richard Loncraine, was fired mid-shoot. Entire sets were rebuilt. Budgets exploded past $40 million. Fox executives panicked, believing audiences would reject a slow character study without space battles. When it finally released, it flopped, vanishing under the shadow of Back to the Future. Years later, VHS resurrected it. Viewers discovered an emotional intimacy rarely seen in sci-fi. Critics re-evaluated it as one of the genre's most compassionate works, a rare film where humanity is found not in humans, but in empathy itself. The message endures today across alien wars and digital frontiers. Sometimes, survival means understanding the enemy inside you. Number 13. The Hidden, 1987. The Hidden was the ultimate sleeper hit that almost disappeared. Released quietly by New Line Cinema, it combined hard-boiled cop thriller with body-snatching sci-fi in a way that predicted the X-Files and Men in Black. The tagline said it all: it kills for pleasure. Kyle MacLachlan plays an FBI agent with a secret, and Michael Nouri is the weary Los Angeles cop who doesn't trust him. Together they hunt a parasitic alien that jumps from body to body, leaving trails of crime chaos and stolen Ferraris. The violence was raw, the humor black, the soundtrack pure 80s adrenaline. Censors hated it. Critics dismissed it as just another alien chase flick. But audiences who saw it in late-night screenings knew better. Beneath the gunfights was a subtext about identity loss and corruption. MacLachlan's eerie, calm performance hinted that he too might not be human. Behind the scenes, director Jack Scholder fought studio pressure to cut the weird humor and surreal tone. He refused. The result was something electric, a genre mashup that captured the decade's obsession with excess and alienation. By the 2000s, The Hidden was rediscovered on DVD, hailed by filmmakers like Guillermo del Toro and Edgar Wright as a secret masterpiece of pacing and invention. It became proof that forgotten B-movies sometimes hold the DNA of modern science fiction. In every stolen body, it hides the question, who are we when desire takes control? Number 12, Starman, 1984. When Starman premiered, it was overshadowed by another alien story, Spielberg's E.T. But unlike that sentimental blockbuster, John Carpenter's quiet masterpiece was about lost longing and the aching fragility of humanity. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Was it science fiction, or romance, or something far deeper? Jeff Bridges plays an alien who takes human form after finding a lock of hair belonging to a grieving widow's dead husband. Karen Allen's performance as Jenny is one of heartbreak and rediscovery. Together, they cross the American heartland, pursued by paranoid government agents and military hunters. It's a love story told through headlights, desert sunsets, and radio static from distant stars. Carpenter, known for The Thing and Halloween, toned down his horror instincts and built a film about empathy instead of fear. Yet, Columbia Pictures didn't believe in its potential. Executives demanded it be softened and cut promotional funding to focus on safer projects. Theaters didn't know how to market it. For many, it vanished quietly, despite Jeff Bridges earning an Oscar nomination. Over the decades, Starman grew into something sacred. It found life on television airings and late-night replays where new generations saw its tenderness as radical. The film's message, that compassion is humanity's rarest power, became more relevant as technology and cynicism grew. Today, Starman stands not as a lost relic, but as proof that science fiction can heal as well as haunt. The stars are only mirrors for the human heart. Number 11, Outland, 1981. Outland was described as high noon in space. Set on Jupiter's moon, Io, it was both a western and a warning about corporate greed. Sean Connery played a federal marshal investigating mysterious minor deaths in a remote colony owned by a ruthless corporation. The film was bleak, industrial, and brutal, a future drenched in sweat, grime, and silence. Director Peter Hyams created a claustrophobic atmosphere of neon corridors and vacuum-sealed terror. Instead of aliens, he focused on human corruption. The miners overdosed on stimulant drugs designed to keep productivity high at the cost of their sanity. When Connery's character exposes the scheme, he becomes a target, himself hunted by assassins across the mining outpost. Censors were uneasy about its unflinching violence. Studio executives were baffled. It had the budget of Star Wars, but none of the joy. Audiences didn't come for moral despair. The film underperformed, buried by critics who called it too dark and slow. Yet among industry insiders, it earned quiet respect for its production design and realism. Later, fans rediscovered Outland on home video, admiring how it anticipated corporate dystopias like Blade Runner and Alien. Its slow tension and ethical fury influenced dozens of later sci-fi thrillers. It remains a time capsule of early 80s cynicism, when space no longer symbolized hope, but servitude. Outland's silence echoes the truth. Sometimes the future is just another frontier for greed. Number 10, The Last Starfighter, 1984. In an age before the internet, The Last Starfighter dared to dream that an ordinary gamer could save the galaxy. It was both a cult fantasy and a technological pioneer, the first movie to use extensive computer-generated space battles. Critics dismissed it as juvenile, but for kids of the 80s, it felt like destiny waiting at the local arcade. The story follows Alex Rogan, a trailer park teenager whose life seems trapped in dead-end monotony until he beats a mysterious arcade game. The twist: the game is a recruitment test for real interstellar pilots fighting an alien empire. Suddenly, Alex is thrust into cosmic war alongside robotic co-pilots and shimmering digital starfields. Production was revolutionary and chaotic. The filmmakers gambled everything on untested CGI software, rendering time for a single shot sometimes took weeks. Universal executives panicked, but director Nick Castle, who once played the masked killer in Halloween, believed audiences were ready for a digital dream. When released, it barely survived competition from Ghostbusters and Gremlins, yet Its charm and sincerity kept it alive through VHS and Saturday TV. Decades later, it's hailed as a technological milestone that inspired Pixar and modern visual effects. Rumors of a sequel surface every few years, proof that nostalgia never truly dies. The Last Starfighter remains the ultimate fantasy of escape, a reminder that heroism can emerge from boredom, that the next frontier might just flicker on a screen, waiting for someone to press start. Number 9. Altered States, 1980. Altered States was the fever dream that terrified studios and fascinated scientists. Directed by Ken Russell and based on the novel by Paddy Chayefsky, it told the story of a Harvard scientist who experiments with sensory deprivation and hallucinogenic drugs to unlock the origins of human consciousness. What he finds instead is regression, not just mentally, but physically, as he begins to de-evolve into primal forms of life. The film was a visual assault of light, sound, and transformation. Russell, known for his surreal excess, pushed every scene into delirium. William Hurt, in his first major role, played the scientist as both genius and madman. His metamorphoses involved groundbreaking makeup effects and nightmarish imagery of ancient deserts and cosmic voids. But behind the camera, chaos reigned. Chayefsky, the acclaimed screenwriter of Network, despised Russell's flamboyance and removed his name from the credits. The studio nearly shelved the film, fearing audiences wouldn't understand its wild mix of philosophy and body horror. When it finally hit theaters, critics were divided. Some hailed it as visionary, others as incomprehensible madness. In later years, it became a cult icon, beloved by academics and filmmakers alike. Its themes of identity and transcendence influenced everything from The Fly to The Matrix. Altered States remains a strange bridge between spiritual awakening and scientific nightmare, a reminder that the deepest space might be inside the human mind itself. Number 8. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. Across the Eighth Dimension, 1984. Few films are as gloriously bizarre as Buckaroo Banzai. It bombed on release, baffled critics, and confused audiences. Yet today, it stands as one of the most eccentric masterpieces of the decade, a cult film so weird that its very failure became legendary. The plot defies summary. Buckaroo Banzai is a neurosurgeon, physicist, rock star, and adventurer who travels between dimensions to stop evil aliens disguised as humans. He's played by Peter Weller, with effortless cool, backed by a team of scientists and musicians called the Hong Kong Cavaliers. The cast also included Jeff Goldblum, John Lithgow, and Ellen Barkin, all performing with wild energy. The tone was deadpan absurd, comic book science fiction delivered as if it were a spy thriller. Studio executives didn't get the joke. Marketing was non-existent. The film opened quietly and died in theaters after 2 weeks. Fans who discovered it on VHS passed around copies like Forbidden Treasure, whispering lines like, "Remember, no matter where you go, there you are." Behind the scenes, director W.D. Richter fought to preserve its surreal tone against constant studio notes demanding clarity. He refused to explain the world's strangeness. As a result, Buckaroo Banzai became a cinematic cult religion, with conventions, fan clubs, and even proposed sequels that never happened. Today, it's hailed as the blueprint for postmodern sci-fi humor, influencing Men in Black, Guardians of the Galaxy, and countless others. Its legacy lives on in its pure, unfiltered imagination, proof that confusion can be a kind of genius. Number 7. Brainstorm, 1983. Brainstorm was meant to redefine how audiences experienced movies. Directed by Douglas Trumbull, the visual effects pioneer behind 2001, A Space Odyssey, it explored the dangers of recording human consciousness itself. But tragedy and corporate betrayal turned it into one of Hollywood's most cursed productions. Natalie Wood and Christopher Walken starred as scientists developing a device that lets users relive another person's memories, sensations, even death. When the military intervenes to weaponize it, the experiment spirals out of control. The concept was decades ahead of its time, anticipating virtual reality debates and digital immortality long before they were real. Then, disaster struck. During filming, Natalie Wood drowned under mysterious circumstances. Production halted. Rumors spread that the movie would never be finished. MGM wanted to scrap it completely, but Trumbull refused. He completed the film as a tribute to her using the immersive 70mm Super Panavision process he had invented. When Brainstorm finally released, the marketing was buried under scandal. Critics were torn between its visionary ideas and uneven pacing. Audiences stayed away. Yet years later, its influence became undeniable. The movie's visual sequences inspired everything from Strange Days to The Lawnmower Man and even VR simulation design. Today, Brainstorm is remembered as both haunting experiment and artistic eulogy. It stands as a meditation on curiosity, love, and the dangerous temptation to see what lies beyond death. The film whispers the warning that some frontiers are not meant to be crossed, even by dreamers. Number 6. Trancers, 1984. Trancers was never meant to survive. It was a low-budget, direct-to-video experiment by Charles Band's Empire Pictures, yet somehow it became one of the most beloved cult sci-fi franchises of the decade. Mixing film noir grit with time travel absurdity, it proved that creativity could outgun cash any day. Tim Thomerson stars as Jack, Death, a hard-boiled cop from a post-apocalyptic 23rd century Los Angeles. His mission: travel back in time to stop a psychic criminal who turns people into zombie-like trancers. Jack lands in the body of his ancestor in the neon-soaked streets of 1985, armed only with sarcasm and a laser watch. The production was scrappy, shot on real Los Angeles locations for pennies. Crew members doubled as extras. The studio wanted something flashy, but director Charles Band aimed for heart over hardware. Despite its shoestring budget, Trancers delivered snappy dialogue and stylish mood reminiscent of Blade Runner on a dime. Censors barely noticed it, and that saved it. Released straight to video, it bypassed theaters and found an instant following among sci-fi diehards who rented it again and again. Critics later praised its tone humor and the chemistry between Thomerson and a young Helen Hunt. Over the years, it spawned 5 sequels and endless fan theories about its layered timeline. Trancers became the underground hero of 80s science fiction, a reminder that you don't need millions to make audiences believe in the impossible. Sometimes all it takes is attitude and a trench coat. Number 5. Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, 1983. Space Hunter was Columbia Pictures' desperate attempt to cash in on Star Wars fever. Released in 3D and starring Peter Strauss and a young Molly Ringwald, it promised intergalactic thrills. What it delivered was a dusty mix of Mad Max and Flash Gordon that critics mocked, but fans quietly adored. The story follows Wolf, a cynical space scavenger who crash lands on a ravaged planet while rescuing 3 stranded women. There he teams up with Ringwald's scrappy survivor Nikki to face off against Overdog, a mutant warlord played with grotesque relish by Michael Ironside. The sets were bizarre metal cathedrals and toxic wastelands drenched in fog and smoke. Filming was brutal. Equipment failed constantly under desert heat. The 3D technology malfunctioned so often that scenes had to be reshot repeatedly. The studio rushed post-production to release it ahead of Return of the Jedi, a fatal mistake. It was crushed at the box office and vanished almost instantly. But VHS made it immortal. Teenagers rented it for its strange mix of humor, grit, and pulpy imagination. Its influence can be seen in later films like Pitch Black and Guardians of the Galaxy with their rugged loners and makeshift families. Today, Space Hunter stands as a relic of analog science fiction, loud, messy, and sincere. It reminds us of a time when filmmakers built universes with their hands and dirt rather than computers. The Forbidden Zone still echoes with the sound of forgotten dreams. Number 4. The Quiet Earth, 1985. Few films capture loneliness like The Quiet Earth. Made in New Zealand on a modest budget, it opens with one of the most haunting images in cinema: a man waking to find every other human on Earth gone. No explosions, no warning, just silence. Bruno Lawrence plays Zach Hobson, a scientist who survives a global energy experiment gone wrong. Alone in empty supermarkets and deserted cities, he slowly unravels, building godlike fantasies to fill the void. But then he discovers 2 other survivors, and the film shifts into something deeper: a study of guilt, redemption, and rebirth at the end of the world. Critics initially dismissed it as too slow, too quiet. American distributors didn't know how to market a post-apocalyptic story without violence or monsters. Yet those who found it never forgot it. The final scene showing Zach standing before a surreal alien sunrise became legend whispered about among sci-fi fans for decades. Behind the camera, the filmmakers faced constant funding crises and weather disasters, but refused to compromise. They built emotion through stillness, through radio static, and whispered monologues. Today, The Quiet Earth is regarded as one of the most profound sci-fi dramas ever made, influencing everything from 28 Days Later to I Am Legend. It turns the apocalypse into poetry and asks a terrifying question. If the world vanished tomorrow, what parts of us would remain worth saving? Number 3. The Abyss, 1989. When The Abyss surfaced, it was both a marvel and a warning. James Cameron's underwater odyssey pushed the limits of filmmaking further than anyone imagined. Shot in massive water tanks under punishing conditions, it became one of the most grueling productions in Hollywood history. But what emerged was a vision of awe. A story about alien contact deep beneath the sea. The film follows a team of oil rig divers enlisted by the Navy to recover a sunken submarine. Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio play estranged lovers forced to work together as mysterious lights swirl in the ocean's depths. What they discover is not horror, but transcendence, an alien intelligence that communicates through liquid light and empathy. Behind the scenes, however, the experience was brutal. Actors endured freezing water 12-hour days and near breakdowns. Harris later admitted he almost quit multiple times. Mastrantonio reportedly collapsed after endless takes. The press dubbed the set The Abuse. Studio executives panicked over delays and a ballooning $70 million budget. When released, The Abyss baffled audiences expecting another Alien-style thriller. Instead, they got a metaphysical love story about fear and faith. It underperformed in theaters, yet won an Oscar for visual effects and became legendary on home video once the longer, special edition restored Cameron's full vision. Today, The Abyss stands as both miracle and metaphor, a testament to human endurance and the unknown forces that dwell within and beyond us. Its shimmering creatures remind us that empathy, not technology, is our last hope in the deep. Number 2. They Live, 1988. They Live was John Carpenter's punk prophecy, a low-budget sci-fi that spoke louder than any blockbuster. Critics dismissed it as absurd, audiences found it strange, but over time it became one of the most eerily accurate visions of modern life ever filmed. Roddy Piper plays a drifter who discovers sunglasses that reveal a horrifying truth. The ruling class are aliens using subliminal messages to enslave humanity. Billboards read, "Obey and consume." Politicians and businessmen are grotesque creatures hiding behind human masks. What begins as pulp satire unfolds into a scathing political allegory about greed and media manipulation. Carpenter wrote it as a warning against corporate control in the Reagan era. Studios resisted, fearing backlash from advertisers. The film was marketed poorly and critics mocked its tone. But underground audiences understood. College screenings and midnight theaters turned it into a rallying cry for the disillusioned. The 6-minute alley brawl between Piper and Keith David became the stuff of legend, a symbol of rebellion stubborn and endless. Carpenter faced censorship threats over its anti-establishment message, but refused to compromise. Decades later, They Live feels less like fantasy and more like prophecy. Its imagery echoes across pop culture from street art to fashion. The film's final shot, a woman realizing the lie is over, still lands like a punch. Carpenter's message lingers. The truth is always hiding in plain sight, if you dare to see it. Number 1. Brazil, 1985. Terry Gilliam's Brazil is the ultimate dystopian nightmare of the 1980s, a dream too dangerous for its own studio. Inspired by Orwell's 1984, it imagined a future where bureaucracy had replaced humanity. But behind the camera, the real battle was just as apocalyptic. Jonathan Pryce plays Sam Lowry, a low-level government worker lost in a labyrinth of paperwork and propaganda. He dreams of flying away with the woman he loves, played by Kim Greist, while a totalitarian state crushes imagination beneath endless forms and ducts. Robert De Niro appears as a rogue repairman, battling the system one pipe at a time. Universal Pictures hated the ending. Executives demanded Gilliam replace his dark, tragic finale with a cheerful one for American audiences. He refused. The conflict turned into one of Hollywood's most famous censorship wars. Gilliam secretly screened the film for critics, who immediately awarded it Best Picture from the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, before it was officially released. Cornered, the studio surrendered, and the original cut hit theaters. Audiences were divided. Some found it maddening, others saw a genius. Over time, Brazil became a cultural monument, a film that predicted modern surveillance and bureaucratic madness decades before it became reality. Gilliam's chaotic vision, part nightmare, part opera, still resonates in every form we fill, every screen that watches us. It was never just a movie. It was a rebellion captured on film. The 1980s gave us dreams too strange for their time, yet too powerful to vanish. Each of these forgotten films held a mirror to fear, wonder, and rebellion. Maybe the future wasn't meant to be shiny, but uncertain and alive. Which of these lost visions do you remember? Subscribe and awaken another memory from the vault.